So as soon as I received that call that he was no more, and the news was all over, everyone was posting it on social media, all I could think of was my daughters. I was hoping that they would not get this news, from social media, because as you know, he was a well-known person. So I decided to call the schools, contact the teachers, and ask them if it was an appropriate time for me to contact the girls and tell them the information. Well, in both schools, I was advised to wait because the children were having, or the kids were having their exams. So I waited a day and then called them and informed them because I didn't want anyone else to break this bad news to them. As soon as I told my kids, of course, they broke down in tears, and I could feel, being so far away from them, my heart was also broken. So I promised my kids to pick them up from school because I also asked them if they wanted to attend the funeral, and they said that they wanted to go and bury their dad. And so it was up to me to facilitate that. I decided I wanted to be there for my kids no matter what, because I knew that they would be so broken, and I needed to just hug them and assure them that everything was going to be fine. Of course, there was all sorts of fake news on social media and all sorts of things that came up during that time. People dug out old news and stuff like that. But I decided that I was going to wait and address that later, because the most important thing here was that my kids attended and buried their biological father. So the bottom line here was to make sure that I flew in and took my kids, because they had and they needed my presence in there. And that's why, the many questions you're asking, why did she have to fly there? I did this all because my kids needed me there. They wanted, or they required their mom's love. This was a parent they had lost, the part of them had gone. So they needed me to actually comfort them and assure them that I am there. I saw so many people asking so many things, saying that I had spoken about the differences we had before, and they were wondering why all of a sudden I was, concerned and stuff like that. That's because, yes, we had so many differences. And am I going to deny that I said that earlier on? Am I going to change the story now? No. We had our fights, but that was not going to change that. There was something that connected us. There was something, or we had a common interest: the children. I made this promise to myself many years ago when we had our problems, that I was never going to involve the children in our problems. So I didn't tell them that he's a bad person. They had their own connection in their own way, because like it or not, he was their biological dad. They had their own conversations, which I didn't even get involved. I didn't even know what they were talking about. I didn't know what they were telling each other. But I knew that as their dad, or as their biological father, he wasn't going to harm them. He was not going to say bad things to them. He was not going to let our differences come in between him and the children. I knew that all along. Of course, there are people who wondered why I attended the burial. Now, if you remember, a while ago, I told you guys, or I told everyone, that my life revolves around my children. My life and everything in it, everything I do, I consider, how are my kids going to be affected by this move? How are my kids going to benefit from me doing this? That's something that they're my top most priority. And so in this case, you all understand that they needed to go there. They were going to be broken. They needed someone to comfort them. And that person was not going to be a stranger or someone else who doesn't understand them. That person was going to be me. Now, if there was a possibility of him waking up on that day, would he have expected anything different from what happened? Would he have expected to find me there? The answer is yes. He would have expected to find me supporting his children. If the situation was different and I was the one lying there or in his position, I would also have expected the same from him. I would have expected him to be there supporting our children. And so I'd like to say one thing to all of you out there who are bringing up your kids, separately. Do not involve your kids in your problems. They're not part of that. Two of you have issues, two of you are fighting, two of you have problems. Your children should not be part of that. You should be able, even if you're not talking to each other, you should be able to make the children as comfortable as possible. So in most cases, we find people who have actually, biological parents who've separated and either, and moved on, remarried perhaps. We find people being unable to balance all that. In my situation, for example, Fafashi has been very supportive. In fact, he was very supportive and concerned when I told him I am taking the kids to the funeral. He's the one who drove me to the airport. So you need to know how to balance all these things. Let them not affect each other. So of course by now you've had a lot of news going on, going around, fake news and all that kind of stuff. But because I respect the departed soul, I respect my children, and I respect the widow or the wife and the children who've been left behind, I'm going to let that be, lock that door and throw away that key.